The bar is dim, the kind of dark wood and worn leather place where men come to nurse an honest wound, not hide a cheap one. I see the tension in your jaw, friend. You haven't even touched the drink yet, but you look like you've been slammed through a wall. Put the keys down, stop the car. You've been driving for 3 days straight, haven't you? Driving and replaying, driving and replaying. The endless loop is playing behind your eyes right now. I can see the flicker in your gaze every time the music stops. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to understand this is not a comfort session. We're not here to pity the fact that she walked away. We're here because we need to talk about the weight you're carrying and how that weight is almost entirely self-inflicted. That acid you feel churning in your stomach, the one that makes you clench your teeth when the memory hits, that isn't grief, not purely. Grief is clean. It's the natural pain of severance. What you feel is regret, and regret is poison. It's the constant internal screaming of your own violated boundaries. It is the realization that you allowed your own foundation to crumble, piece by expensive piece, until the structure could no longer bear the slightest wind. You are here because you made the classic devastating mistake that almost every good man makes at least once. You confused availability with value. You truly believed, deep down in the soft center of your commitment, that being a doormat proved you were a good man. You thought being constantly responsive, endlessly agreeable, and utterly malleable showed her the depth of your devotion. It only proved one thing, that you lacked a foundation entirely. Look at me. I've been there. Every man worth his salt has driven that same lonely road. We've all been in that car, hands gripping the wheel, trying to dissect a dead relationship for some clue as to what we could have done differently, what ritual sacrifice we should have performed to keep the structure standing. We torture ourselves with the specifics, the wrong word, the missed dinner, the argument over the curtains, but those were never the cause. They were merely the symptom. The cause was the dissolution of you. The drive ends now. You're putting the car in park here at this stool. We stop the replay. We are going to drain that poison of regret, and the only way to do that is to look at the truth of how you gave yourself away. You were sold a lie, and you bought it with your soul. The lie is the social programming that tells us that to be a successful partner means to compromise until you disappear. You hear it everywhere. Whispered by well-meaning friends, shouted by terrible magazine articles, just be a good listener, just be supportive. Show her she can trust you by giving her the keys to your life, your time, and your emotional stability. This is not advice for building a powerful bond. This is propaganda designed to breed weak men and entitled partners. It teaches you that your selfhood is a disposable component, secondary to the harmony of the relationship. It conditions you to believe that the greatest expression of love is self-erasure. Let's talk about the hard truth of nature, the cold stoic reality that underpins all human interaction, whether in the marketplace or the bedroom. Attraction, respect, and deep-lasting relationship bonds are built on frame and scarcity, not desperate availability. Do you remember how it felt when you first met her? You had a life. You had a trajectory. Your phone wasn't glued to your hand waiting for her text. You had commitments, goals, and a schedule that didn't bend instantly to her whim. That man, the man with the direction and the centered gravity, was the man she respected. Then, slowly, you started the decay. You started prioritizing the immediate emotional comfort of the situation over the long-term integrity of yourself. You swapped the iron rule of self-sovereignty for the soft comfort of continuous proximity. The iron rule, etched in the bronze of every wise man's history, is this: you cannot respect what has no center. And, more critically, she cannot respect what has no center. A man whose boundaries are conditional upon his partner's mood, a man who sacrifices his mission because his partner felt lonely for 10 minutes, is not a partner. He is a resource pool. He is an appliance, and appliances, while useful, are not cherished. They are simply used until they break down or are replaced by a newer model. You allowed yourself to be seen as the perpetual wellspring of reassurance, the emergency comfort blanket. You allowed her to believe that if she tugged on your chain, you would come running, and you did. We need to redefine what high value actually means. Forget the cars, forget the title on the business card, forget the money in the bank. Those are external factors easily lost. High value, in the context of stoic manliness and genuine connection, is self-sovereignty. It is the certainty that your mission, your duty to your purpose, your health, your discipline, does not stop for her convenience, her anxiety, or her insecurity. Sovereignty is the quiet, internal certainty that you are whole, complete, and purposeful without her. Her addition to your life is a joy and a privilege, but her departure is not a fatal wound, merely a change of landscape. You lost that sovereignty because you began to define your success, your worth, and your very manhood by her reflection. You looked into her eyes to see if you were doing a good job being you. That dependence is the fatal flaw. It is the moment the parasite entered the host. I promise you, it wasn't one big dramatic fight. It wasn't the day she packed her bags. It was 1,000 tiny retreats, 1,000,000 micro-sacrifices that you filed under the heading of love or being accommodating. Think back. The mechanism of surrender begins the moment you stop offering leadership and start offering validation. You chose validation over leadership. Leadership says, I know where we are going, and I am committed to this path. I understand you are anxious, but we must proceed. Validation says, I will stop everything, burn the map, and sit here until you feel comfortable enough to allow me to proceed. Do you remember when you cancelled that weekend trip with your friends, the annual hunting or fishing retreat that you look forward to all year? Not because there was a real crisis, but because she expressed a vague sense of sadness or guilt about being alone. You cancelled a commitment to your brotherhood and your established ritual for the sake of managing her temporary emotional state. That was a withdrawal of dignity. Then there was the instant access. Every text, every call answered immediately, regardless of what you were doing. The unspoken expectation was established. My time is less valuable than your curiosity. You trained her that her fleeting thought deserves your instant, undivided attention, even if you were working on something critical, training at the gym, or spending time with family. You mistook service for value. Service is offering to fetch water. Value is building the well. You spent all your time offering to fetch the water, becoming instantly accessible, offering immediate emotional relief rather than building the infrastructure of your own life and inviting her to join the fortress. The fatal trade you made, friend, was insidious. You demanded external validation for internal virtue. You were constantly looking for proof of your worth in her eyes, in her smile, in her willingness to stay. And the moment you needed her validation more than you needed your own integrity, the game was over. She sensed it. She didn't consciously analyze it, but the shift in the energetic dynamic, the frame, was palpable. She went from desiring the strength you brought to demanding the comfort you provided. Think about the poison of anticipation. This is the stage where the man becomes a prediction algorithm, and it is the death of respect. Do you remember when you started preempting her needs? You started buying the food she hadn't asked for yet, apologizing for things she hadn't even mentioned, or canceling plans before she complained about them. You did this because you desperately wanted to avoid the friction, the mild discomfort, or the momentary disappointment that her true needs might cause you. The second you started anticipating her needs, you stopped being a man and started being a perfectly predictable, slightly anxious machine designed solely for her satisfaction. Predictability is the death of respect. You robbed her of the natural satisfaction of asking for something and seeing a strong man decide whether to grant it or not. You took away her opportunity to respect your boundaries because you removed them entirely. Instead, she just had to exist, and you would fold yourself into the desired shape This taught her unequivocally that your shape was pliable, easily deformed, and fundamentally less important than her transient desires. This wasn't love. This was servitude driven by anxiety, and that anxiety, the constant worry that if you weren't perfect, she would leave, is what fueled your internal collapse. You weren't living for your mission, you were living to maintain her approval. The man who lives for external approval is always living on borrowed time and borrowed strength. You feel heavy right now, right? The air feels thick, your limbs feel slow. We need to talk about the weight of that emotional chain you forged. It feels heavy because it's made of the purest, densest element known to man, your own dignity. You didn't realize that every time you sacrificed a non-negotiable principle, every time you cancelled a vital commitment, every time you swallowed a necessary truth for the sake of peace, you were hammering another link into that chain. And that chain, friend, doesn't bind her. It binds you. It binds your spirit, your drive, and your capacity for joy. The greatest cost of this failure isn't her walking away. Let me say that again. The greatest tragedy is not the loss of the relationship. The greatest cost is the quiet internal contempt you feel for the man you became during that surrender. Look at the man in the mirror. You see him, don't you? That ghost of who you were, standing behind the reflection of who you are now. He whispers, "You let yourself go. You allowed them to define you. You became small." That whisper is the sound of your self-respect being starved to death. That whisper is the most dangerous form of internal friction because it undermines every future attempt at strength. A Stoic understands that his primary duty is to his character. If you maintain your character, your integrity, and your virtue, the external losses sting, but they do not break the soul. But when you sacrifice your integrity for the hope of external comfort, when you become a liar to yourself, the external loss merely confirms the internal devastation. She didn't just leave you. She left the hollowed-out shell of the man who sold his own soul for her presence. You stop sweating for your goals, and you start sweating over her texts. You stop thinking about how to conquer the next professional challenge, and you start agonizing over how to avoid the next argument. Your focus shifts from creation to maintenance, from building the exterior world to managing the interior world of another person. This is a failure of duty. Your duty is to be the best, most capable, most purposeful man you can be. That duty is primary, not selfish. It is the gravitational force that allows you to give genuinely, strongly, and reliably. When you abandon that duty, you cease to be a center of gravity and become merely debris. You need to recognize the difference between servitude and partnership. A true partner supports your mission, challenges your blind spots, and fiercely respects your boundaries. A servant dissolves his mission to accommodate demands, shields the partner from all necessary discomfort, and views his boundaries as negotiable assets. You didn't enter into a partnership. You trained her to see you as the latter. And when she walked away, she wasn't rejecting a man. She was simply abandoning a resource she no longer found valuable or useful. The man who sacrifices everything for his partner eventually teaches her that he is worth nothing. That is the devastating equation we must face head-on. That devastating equation, the man who sacrifices everything for his partner eventually teaches her that he is worth nothing, is the cliff face we now stand upon. We must look down into the chasm and understand that the man who was rejected was not simply unlucky. He was an accomplice in his own destruction. You were not rejected for being a flawed man. You were rejected for becoming predictable utility. You traded the terrifying, invigorating challenge of being a man who pursues excellence for the comfortable, suffocating identity of being a man who provides easy accommodation. And when you make yourself comfortable to live with, you make yourself easy to leave. When the man abandons his climb for the comfort of the base camp, he commits the great apostasy, the betrayal of the self. Think back. It wasn't just the big sacrifices. It was the daily, incremental surrender of your non-negotiables. You stopped going to the gym consistently because she needed company on the sofa. You shelved the demanding side project because she needed undivided attention. You let the sharpness of your mind dull because she found the intensity uncomfortable. You started apologizing for the parts of you that required discipline, complexity, and solitude, the very parts that made you interesting and capable of leading. You learned to manage her emotional state rather than mastering your own domain. You became an emotional janitor, sweeping up every speck of doubt, friction, or dissatisfaction. The cost of this service is astronomical. Every emotional state you shield her from, every uncomfortable conversation you avoid, every conflict you dissolve prematurely, teaches her that stability is more important than truth, and that you prioritize her short-term comfort over your long-term integrity. When you consistently choose to accommodate friction instead of engaging with friction, you cease to be a leader of yourself and a partner in the journey. You become a resource management system. She leaves, and suddenly, the resource management system is shut down. The infrastructure remains, but the power is cut. You look around, bewildered, realizing that in the pursuit of maintaining the relationship, you dismantled the very man she was attracted to in the first place. You taught her, through your actions, that your own needs, goals, and boundaries were secondary, and therefore entirely optional. We are past diagnoses. The mirror has been shattered, and the man who stands before you is a collection of borrowed behaviors and forgotten ambitions. Now we must speak of the pivot, the puntos de no retorno, the irreversible decisions that forge the self anew. This is not a self-help retreat. This is a rebuilding project executed in the heat of necessity. You are no longer trying to earn back what you lost. You are trying to become the man who cannot be lost. The first point of no return is the absolute surgical detachment from external validation. Until you excise the dependency on female approval, be it from your former partner or future prospects, you remain a creature of circumstance, a sailing vessel with no rudder, simply waiting for the next gust of wind to dictate your direction. The sovereignty stack, the unflinching law of priority. If you are to survive this, you must construct an internal architecture based on immutable laws. The primary law is simple. The mission comes first. He places an unbearable pressure on the partner to provide his entire sense of meaning. He communicates that his life lacks inherent meaning, and therefore he lacks inherent value. The point of no return here is declaring, internally and externally, that your primary identity is defined by what you do and what you build, independent of who sleeps beside you. If the woman in your life attempts to derail that mission, to negotiate away the hours required for the grind, or to use emotional leverage to enforce comfortable mediocrity, the answer must be an unyielding, practiced no. The man who crosses this boundary accepts the friction. He understands that a woman respects the boundaries she cannot penetrate far more than the space she is freely allowed to occupy. The iron discipline of the boundary. You must institute a zero-tolerance policy for the violation of your boundaries. Boundaries are not requests. They are declarations of your own operational limits. They are the walls of your sovereign territory. In the past, you treated boundaries like negotiable assets. I prefer you not do X, but if you do, I will absorb the cost to maintain peace. The point of no return requires boundaries to become instantaneous costs. When a line is crossed, the cost must be borne by the trespasser, and the enforcement must be immediate and predictable. This is not punitive. It is informative. It is teaching the world how to treat you. You are training yourself and the world around you that your respect is not passive, it is an active defense. If you cannot enforce your territory, you possess none. The rejection of the comfort scaffold. The final point of no return is the conscious abandonment of all behavioral scaffolds designed for comfort and ease. The old self was defined by avoidance of necessary discomfort. the new self must actively seek it out. You must stop managing her emotions. This is perhaps the hardest shift. When distress arises, you must hold the line of calm neutrality. You are there as a supportive structure, not a shock absorber. You allow her to feel the full weight of her own reactions, her own responsibilities, and the natural friction of life, without intervening to soothe or fix the unfixable. This pivot is terrifying because it feels like rejection, but rejection is merely the cost of self-reclamation. You are shedding the skin of utility to reveal the bone of value. The first step in rebuilding is regaining mastery over the domain you directly control: your body, your routines, and your immediate environment. You must embrace the discipline of discomfort. Choose the cold shower. Choose the heavy lift. Choose the early rising. Choose the sustained focus on the difficult task. Physical discipline is the initial training ground for mental fortitude. When you teach your body that you are the commander, not the responder, you signal to your unconscious mind that the chaos is over. You are in charge of your suffering, and therefore you are in charge of your progress. Your mornings must become sacred. They must be dedicated to accumulation, not reaction. No phone, no news, no external input until the first critical task of your mission is underway. This establishes a psychological high ground for the rest of the day. You start the day as the architect, not the audience. Value for a man is defined by his capacity to contribute significantly to the world. If you do not have a mission, a craft, or an aspiration that commands your deepest respect, you will always seek validation from superficial sources. You must return to the grind of becoming excellent at something difficult. Excellence is not a destination, it is a direction. It requires deep work, sustained focus, and the willingness to fail publicly and repeatedly. This is where you find true self-respect, because self-respect is not the belief that you are adequate. It is the knowledge that you are putting forth your maximal effort toward a worthy goal. When you are deeply engaged in worthy work, you develop a natural magnetic energy. This is not the fake confidence of boastfulness. It is the quiet confidence of capability. The man deeply committed to his mission radiates a frequency that distinguishes him from the desperate men seeking distraction or validation. He has his own weather system. He doesn't need to borrow sunshine. This work serves as your emotional anchor. When external events, relationship turmoil, financial stress, social friction attempt to pull you under, you can always return to the verifiable fact of your effort and your progress in your primary domain. Your mission is your citadel, impenetrable by the whims of the marketplace or the moods of a partner. You must discard the concept of love as self-sacrifice. Sacrifice is what you do for a dying cause. Investment is what you do for a growing venture. The new paradigm, love as mutual aspiration. The man you become, the sovereign man, does not seek a woman to fill his voids, complete his life, or serve as an emotional crutch. He seeks a partner who is similarly disciplined, similarly pursuing her own excellence, and who views the relationship not as a comfortable retreat from life, but as an energetic staging ground for mutual conquest. A true partnership is the alignment of two whole, complete, sovereign individuals who choose to share trajectories. It is two pillars supporting a structure, not two halves leaning on each other. The currency of this relationship is mutual respect for each other's necessary friction, boundaries, and mission demands. She knows you will not fail your mission for her, and she respects you immensely for that clarity. You know she will not require you to compromise your integrity, and you honor her deeply for her strength. This is the hard, cold, beautiful truth. A woman who is worth partnering with will not respect a man who makes her his sole focus. She wants to be a valued passenger on a rocket ship heading toward a defined destination, not the designated mission controller for a satellite that only orbits her life. Your responsibility is to be the rocket ship. Her presence should fuel, and refine the journey, not define the route or serve as the destination. This is the Stoic position applied to the modern relationship context. Your prohairesis, your faculty of choice, your internal integrity, must be guarded fiercely. Nothing external, no relationship status, no emotional comfort, is worth trading for the sovereignty of your soul. You must internalize the understanding that seeking to be loved is a weak, passive pursuit. The goal is to be respected, and respect is the natural, inevitable response to demonstrated strength and self-possession. The self-respect you build now is not conditional. It is not dependent on her returning, or a new woman appearing, or the world applauding your efforts. It is forged in the silence of your own efforts, in the cold light of your own discipline. It is time to stop being the accommodating resource. It is time to stop being the man who seeks permission to exist fully. It is time to stop defining your success by external metrics, especially those provided by women who themselves lack defined internal standards. The only way out is through. The only way up is to become heavier. Heavier with purpose, heavier with commitment, heavier with the weight of self-mastery. Go do the hard thing. Go build the standard.